Welcome, everybody, to our episode 12. And this episode is Accessibility Tips and Strategies for Distance Learning. So I'm Jenna Picata, and I am with...
My name's Abby Almerito, and we're two academic technology specialists from the Santa Clara County Office of Ed. And we're excited to share with you some tips on how to be more accessible in your lessons.
Yes. So welcome, everybody. Just a little bit about the structure that we use in putting on these webinars. We will give you 3 tips for accessibility today, and after each tip, we'll pause to do a little bit of a reflection.
And so I chose this GIF, however you want to say it, today, because behind accessibility is all about figuring out what your students need or individual students' needs are, and then trying to adjust to it and trying to fit whatever pieces you have into the spaces that you have, and then hacking it however you need to, just in case none of those things work.
I love it. It fits perfectly with our topic for today.
Also, happy birthday, Jenna.
That is awesome. I can't believe that Abby did that for me today. So thank you. And I still don't know how to feel about having a birthday during this time. Like, I'm super happy that I have a lot of my friends reaching out to me today, but then I'm also kind of sad that I don't get to celebrate it with all of the people that I normally would celebrate my birthday with. So thank you, Abby. That definitely makes it more special for me today.
All day, the background would be this. I know, life has changed so much, and hopefully, we all remember to, when this is over, celebrate really, really hard.
Yes, definitely. I have so much Southwest credit that I'm definitely going to be taking a trip after all of this.
Take many trips.
All right, so let's get into tip number 1, and that is to apply universal design learning principles. Now, universal design for learning, or UDL, whether you know it or not, you're probably already applying a lot of these principles, especially when it comes to distance learning. And what it really means is just providing access for all. And we know that that's what good teaching is. And so just as a reminder to us, I put an image of the UDL learning guidelines from the CAST website, and as a reminder that we should always be thinking about multiple ways to engage our students, multiple ways to represent and give access to the material that we're presenting to our students. And I know in past episodes, we've talked a lot about giving students choice in the way that they're showing their learning. And that's what action expression is. I've heard a lot of teachers and seen a lot of different choice boards that teachers are presenting to students. So just keeping these 3 principles in mind.
Yeah, teachers are really flexing their UDL muscle, whether they know it or not, because we're in such a different environment, and kids have so many different environments that they're in and conditions that they have to get used to. And so all over, I'm seeing teachers ask questions around like, well, how do I respond to this? How can I support students who need support in X, Y, or Z? And so teachers are asking all the right questions around UDL. And so we're here to hopefully provide you with some ideas and supports on figuring out how to take away some of the barriers that we're seeing through distance learning.
Yeah, and as we were planning for this episode, Abby reminded me about this learner variability project that Digital Promise had put out. And this is a resource that we had been sharing with a lot of districts when we were doing face-to-face trainings, but now that I think about it, it really actually applies in distance learning as well. So I just wanted to do a quick overview of what this is. Digital Promise has done they created this learner variability navigator, and it's based on a lot of research that they've done. And what it is you choose a model. So if I'm taking a look, let me take a look at literacy for grades 7 through 12. And then I'm gonna click on explore factors. So learner variability is basically just the fact that all students are different. There are not any two students that we have in a classroom that are exactly the same. And here are a list of different factors. Now, I'm gonna just click on one. If I'm thinking about a student and distance learning, maybe motivation is going to be a challenge. It might be a barrier. You know, when we don't have our students in front of us, and they have assignments that they can complete on their own time, I'm going to click on motivation, and it gives me a definition, what motivation is, the main ideas about it, links for you to learn more. But this is the part that we really loved, and these are research-based strategies to help with motivation. And if we take a look at some of these, we can definitely use some of them in distance learning. Advanced graphic organizer. I see lots of teachers putting out different templates that students can use to organize their learning. The use of checklists and rubrics. So I thought that this was a good tool to share, even though they don't, it might not directly have a technology tool, but I think that we can kind of stretch ourselves to think of what technology tools we can use with some of these things. And just to dig a little bit further, if I click on any of them, then you can see how it might be used in the classroom, and a bunch of resources as well, along with other factors that are supported by this learning strategy. So
Yeah, I feel like distance learning is this ultimate design thinking challenge for everyone involved. Like, who's the user? What do I need the user to accomplish, or how can I support the user in progressing in a certain way or achieving something? And I love that digital promise tool because it helps you kind of refine what you could do. I think I saw one of the choices was book clubs for motivation. And that's just certainly was like a great option when we were doing face-to-face. And now we're trying to think, well, how can we do that in a digital space? I think book clubs is another excellent example, because what I'm hearing is that students are missing their classmates. And so how can we start to embed more collaborative spaces for them that they get to interact with their peers and do some learning at the same time?
yeah. Another resource that I wanted to share was this best practices for online, or UDL Best Practices for online learning. So this is a blog post that was put out by understood.org. They have a lot of UDL resources, but some things to think about as we're designing these lessons. And the number one tip is to explicitly teach expectations and engagement. This is a new space for teachers, a new space for students, and we should really think about how we're going to set everything up so that they can practice good digital citizenship. So it's really important to set up those expectations in the beginning. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but this is a great resource for you to take a look at. We're definitely today going to be taking a look at making materials accessible. But I love this one right here, embrace your students as teachers. And for a lot of teachers, using technology is really new, but for the students, it's not new to them at all. So it's okay if you're a teacher and you don't feel like you're comfortable using technology. Use some of your students to help you teach other students about maybe how to use some of the technology in some of the assignments that you might have them doing online.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of news reports and radio reports. Some of them are including some parent perspectives. And one of the parent perspectives that I'm really appreciating right now is that they have a true appreciation for the schools and teachers, of course, but they're seeing that some teachers are putting into online learning just like the content, and they're missing and they're acknowledging that their child, their students are like, they learned a lot from other kids too. And so that was a huge eye opener for me in thinking of how we're supporting teachers in this next phase as we move into school the rest of the year online. How can we now embed more cooperative learning? How can that learning from other people still take place in a distance learning environment?
Yeah, and that really leads well into the last tip that they have, is actively build a supportive community. You know, I think now it's going to be super important that you really connect with families and give time to really connect with students and be available for them with all of their different needs during this time. So one other resource that I did put on this page and that I just actually learned about this morning, and a shout out to Jennifer Del Bono for sharing this resource with us. And this is Wide Open School, powered by Common Sense. And earlier we did an episode on digital citizenship, and their Common Sense is doing some really great things with digital citizenship. And if you're an educator, you might be familiar with that curriculum, but this Wide Open School was brand new for me, and I had not seen it until this morning. But you choose if you are an educator or if you're a family, and you're looking for resources for grades 6 through 12 or pre-K through 5. I'm in six through, well, let's go to pre-K through 5, but Common Sense has helped curate a bunch of resources for all of these different categories. So when it comes to access for all students, I know that having access to technology is definitely an issue. Here are some options for trying to help students and families get connected. Access to, meals for students. And then the other one that I was really looking at that was related to this episode in particular, well, there's emotional well-being, English language learners, and then there's also special needs. So, for thinking about the students in our classrooms with IEPs and 504s, there are some resources here as well.
Yeah, we had a chance to speak with Jamie and Merv from Common Sense. And what I really love about this is that for weeks, we've been inundated with resources. I think every day people are sending the same resources out, and I'm getting it 3 or 4 times. And then also people are still sending out these really long lists of resource lists that include everything under the sun. And so as a teacher, I know that it's really difficult to absorb any of those things and really put it into practice. And so what Common Sense has really done is their staff has curated what they believe are the best resources for each of those categories. And so their staff looks at it from a number of different lenses in terms of, security and privacy, the quality of it, the access that students have to be able to engage in it, and the teacher usability as well. So I really appreciate that they've honed down what seems like this endless amount of resources that are out there into short lists that teachers can pick and choose from.
Yes, definitely. I mean, they really made a point to let us know that they're there to put out really quality resources. They didn't want to rush out and really put the first thing out there. They took their time, and I think this Wide Open School is a great example of that. So our question is, what are some other ways to address learner variability through distance learning?
So I am thinking of learner variability a lot these days in terms of environment, and what students have access to at home, even if they do have access to computers and Wi-Fi. And so thinking around things like, well, maybe they don't have a paper and pencil, but they may have, I don't know, like an old magazine or something. And so thinking about how to structure um, lesson plans or activities that students have to do some kind of output for, and then giving a lot of wide open choice in how they can accomplish that task. So still noodling on that, but thinking around like making sure that each activity has at least 3 or 4 different ways that students can engage in it.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And definitely related to UDL. Trying to think, as I'm thinking about this, I'm also thinking about the whole social emotional piece of it. And I think I was sharing with Abby this morning that I had mentioned Jennifer Del Bono. She's the director of Safe and Healthy Schools in our organization, and what she's doing every single morning is she's keeping a Zoom meeting open for any of us who want to. Do you know, what is she calling it? I'm like blanking right now.
Oh, it's something, let me
Is
get
it?
the exact name because I have it in
Yeah.
my calendar. Let's stay human by creating a brave space together.
Yeah, so what it is, it's just a quick check-in in the morning to do to check in with how you're feeling, and to do some breathing exercises, and then to share like a thought that you have after doing that breathing recentering activity, a positive thought to carry you on throughout the day. And I just, after I did the breathing this morning, I just had this thought in my mind of, wouldn't this be great to have this for students? You know, have a safe space for them to check in, to kind of recenter themselves, and, you know, and just an option for that to kind of help them get them through the day.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, as for kids, for adults, this is week 3 for a lot of us, and it feels like the days are smashing into each other. I don't even know what day it is most of the days. And so I think there's this there's this chance that like you could fit like the work can be endless for a student and for an adult. And so if it just bleeds into the next day and the next day without you stopping to set any intention around it and any boundaries around what your work is, what your relationships are, then this could be a very bad space for a lot of people.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to tip number 2, and that is know where to find accessibility features. And so I'm going to have Abby talk about this site that we had taken a screenshot of.
Yeah, we wanted to highlight this site. It's a blog, and it's called Brave in the Attempt. A huge shout out to Sean Arnold. Sean Arnold is a special education teacher and STEM coach out of New York City, and so he's really in the depths of distance learning there. And before all of this, though, he kept a regular blog on how to support all students in getting access. He is also kind of like a go-to UDL expert for me as well. And so if you go to Brave in the Attempt, I believe it's braveintheattempt.com.
Yeah, let me try and get there.
He's been blogging for a while, and this is actually maybe his 3rd or 4th career. And so he's got a lot of different lenses that he's looking at technology and education through. But you can see from his About Me page that he's like got all the certifications. But what we have up here is if you just search for accessibility, he's blogged about it quite a bit, and done a lot of tutorials and just discuss a lot of different ways different platforms are giving accessibility. And so he has one for Google, Microsoft. I know he has another one for Apple somewhere down the way. So this is a great resource for you if you're just getting started. He has a lot of tips on what extensions to get, what apps to use. This one is specifically for Google accessibility. So he pops in different videos and resources. So it's just a great one-stop shop for a lot of tools, but then also ideas. So he talks about a lot of different ideas that he has in terms of giving access to students.
Yeah, this is a great resource. So we definitely have a link to that in our show notes. This is a good one to share with teachers. So thank you for sharing that resource with us.
Yeah, happy to amplify the voices of the people in my lives.
Yeah, I mean, in my research for this show, I was just looking for accessibility, but what I love about his blog is that he puts it, in the context of education. And so just reminds us that there are a lot of tools out there that can help us through all of that. And he does highlight a lot of the really great extensions that are out there. And maybe we can just talk about some of them we see people using. And one of them is read and write. So Abby, well, I have the extension here, but I think that if I'm on this page, does it work if I'm on
a Google?
Like a
Should be.
like a, wait, well, let's see. Oh, here we go. So if I'm on this blog, then I have these tools. And actually, isn't read and write is free for educators as well?
Yes. Yeah. There is a paid portion for students, and obviously we want the students to be able to do some of these things also, but it's a great start for educators to get their free account.
Right. So that's really a good one that you can play around with. And I know that he mentions it in his blog as well. So, I mean, the tips here are just to know what kinds of tools that are out there for G Suite and Chrome, and we have links to some of those in our show notes. But also just be familiar with the settings on your device. So if you check the settings on your device, I know on Apple devices, there's a whole setting for accessibility, and there are options for you to be able to zoom in on the pages, to make the texts bigger. You can play around with different voices to do like screen reading for you. So if you just play around with the settings, then I think that will help you get to know what's available on your device. But we also put, like, because I know you might have a different device than your students, we put links to different devices and accessibility features. So with that, our question for this topic is, how are you keeping track of supports that individual students need?
So we don't have an audience today, but that's a great question to ask yourself. We did have an opportunity to sit in on the California Department of Education's webinar yesterday on supporting special ed students. And one of the strategies I wanted to highlight and lift up with this question is, a lot of your students in your classrooms have either IEPs or 504s. And so one strategy that teachers, especially in special ed, are trying to get gen ed teachers to keep as a practice is documenting, what steps are you taking to fulfill the IEP, the language in the IEP that's supposed to help the students. And so the teacher yesterday said that she's keeping a daily log of different things that she's trying and different supports that she's providing to students. And so I think that's a great tip, not just for compliance, but just to organize for yourself as a teacher, like what are the needs of my individual students, whether they're identified in an IEP or a 504 or otherwise, and how are the pieces of my lessons or the structure of my Google Classroom or however I'm delivering this online content, how are those things supporting individual needs?
Yes, I love it. That's a great thought as we think about all of our students that have these varying needs. So for our last tip, we have tips for producing accessible content for students. And I know that the first one on here, Dee Dee had shared with us in her English language learner webinar, and that is the closed captions in Google Slides. So today we are presenting from a Google slide, and all I did to get this caption on when I present, actually, Abby, you can tell me, can you see this bar up here in my lower left-hand corner, or is it just me that sees it?
Yeah, I can see the bar.
Okay, good. So this captions button right here, it's yellow. That means that it's on, and you have the option to have it at the top or at the bottom, and then you can play around with the size. So if I were to make it extra large, now you can see how it's changed it. But especially if we're going to be doing these Zoom meetings or do screen recordings, I think it's a great idea to do the screen recordings and have these captions on for students. So let me change this to be medium again. So that's one of the tips. I'm not going to play this video for you, but this is EDU in 90. And this one is all about accessibility features. So they go over the closed captions feature in Google Slides. And they also go over adding alternative text for images. And that's important for, I mean, it's just good practice, I think, when we put together documents like a Google Doc or Google Slides, for those students who may not be able to see the images, if you put in alternative text, at least they will be able to get a description of what that image is. So that is one of the features that's highlighted in this video. And in our show notes, we have also links to information about using different text styles. So I don't know, Abby, in Google Docs, have you used the different text styles that will show like title, heading, and normal text?
Not when it comes to giving instructions for students, just to organize myself. Well, I don't know what you're going to say about it, but because when you use those different headings, then you can turn on the outline function, and then it's easy for me to toggle between one section to another section. So that may be something that may be of use to students as well.
Yeah, so I think in my research about it now that I'm thinking about it, this is how we can start to organize our things. So, you know, we can easily change this, but change the size and the boldness of it. But if we simply make this a title, we label this as a title, and then maybe we can take these different tips and then make them headings instead. For a student who can't really see, what it does is it helps organize the text for them so that they can quickly skip down to certain features of the document. So if they're just trying to get an overview of what this is, they know exactly what the headings are, and they can get a quick overview of what this whole document is about. So I think that if now when we're creating Google Docs, we think about using this, then that's just good practice so that anybody would have equal access to the information that we're presenting in document. So there's that. And then another really cool one that every time I put it in full screen, here, I'm going to change it so that I can see my tabs at the top. Google Translate Chrome extension. I don't know why I didn't know about this before, but I've always known about Google Translate, but I never went to check if there's a Chrome extension for it. But what it does, and I'm going to test this out. I should have tested this out earlier to see if it worked. I have a Google Translate Chrome extension, and I click on it, and then I click on Translate this page.
Okay, so we had to pause the recording for a moment because of some glitches. So we're back again with Jenna, and she's going to show Google Translate Chrome extension.
So Google Translate, I always knew that Google Translate did exist, but what I didn't know is that there's a Chrome extension. And so earlier this week, I did a training on Google Classroom, and one of the questions was, is there a way to easily translate the activities that I post in Google Classroom? And in that moment, I didn't know the easiest way, but right after that webinar, I decided to do some research, and I found that Google Translate has a Chrome extension, and I have it up here. It's probably really tiny and hard for you to see, but if I click on it, what it says is translate this page. So I'm going to click on translate this page, and this little bar at the top comes up where right now it says it's translated in English, but I can go through and I can translate it into any language that is available here. So right now it's translated in Italian. I'm going to go through and I'm going to translate it in Japanese. Now I can't tell you if the translation is perfect or not, but you know, at least it's a really easy way to have that translation available for parents and students.
Yeah,
So,
that is awesome.
yeah.
Should be turned on immediately for all students and families.
Yeah, so definitely share that one with teachers because it's a really easy one just to have as an extension right there for a quick translation.
Yeah, so you may have to go through your IT department to get this downloaded for all of your students, but then it should be a pretty fast transition. You don't have to teach them how to download a Chrome extension and how to well, you'll have to teach them how to access it, but you'll miss one of those steps. Well, you won't have to do one of those steps.
Yes, great tip. So our last question is, what are some other ways you can make input content more comprehensible for your varied learners?
So I want to try something. I'm going to try sharing something. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Let's see if I choose it properly. So I want to go back to the extension that we mentioned earlier called Read Write. Okay, do you see it?
Yes.
So, awesome. So one way that you can make your input or content more comprehensible is having varied directions in your activities or your lessons. And so I've opened up a blank Google Doc and I typed in write a letter to your friend. But this could be any direction that you give your students, or it could be a step to a direction. So I also have Read Write. And one of my favorite things about Read Write is the picture dictionary. So that could be used in a lot of different ways, and I'm just showing you how to use it to amp up your direction. So I'm going to highlight a word, and then this purple icon here is my extension. And I click on it and I get all of these different tools. But the tool that I want to highlight is this picture icon, so picture dictionary. And it will show me different icons that I can use for that word. And I can just drag it into my Google Doc and use it however. So I can write another set of directions using icons, or I can help students just use visual prompts to help them understand what I'm trying to say. So that's one of my favorite features of ReadWrite is this picture dictionary. It's so easy to use. And then I'll let you share again. And I'm gonna unmute you because you're muted. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. That is a great tip. I was just trying to say that I'm definitely all about those icons. And definitely the Noun Project is a place that I normally go to when I'm looking for different icons that represent any word that I can imagine. So great tip. So with that, I'm just going to give you the link to our show notes. And this has all of those extensions and all those websites that we've talked about in this show. So you can go to bit.ly/SCCOE vlog 12 notes. Wow, I can't believe this is number 12.
I know.
This is awesome.
It's wild.
And then Abby is going to be on again today with a very, very special guest. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're so honored to invite Doreen Bondi. She's a makerspace specialist out of Union School District, but one of her passions is supporting educators in maintaining mental health and just being able to deal with all the stresses that come with being an educator, especially at this time. And so she has curated and created a care package that she'd like to share with educators and some tips and strategies on how to maintain that mental health and calm during this wild and crazy time. So that's today at 1 o'clock.
Awesome. So be sure to check it out. And information about all of our episodes can be found at this link.
Well, that's a Zoom link.
Oh, that's right. Never mind. A lot of our bit.lys are so similar that now I'm thinking they're all the same at this point. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. We are happy to help you. So thank you for watching.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.